Guys, you can never assume that there will never be a false alarm caused by a pole station, because there are people out there that don't know better not to pull a fire alarm unless there's a fire. Okay? So this is why we put stoppers over pole stations in public areas that are most at risk being tampered with. The stopper is a way to prevent or reduce false alarms from pole stations, because the stopper has an alarm built into it when you lift it to access the pole station, and it's very loud, and that alarm is there to draw a lot of attention to the pole station that it's about to be pulled, and the person pulling it will be caught. Yeah, it's loud too. It has to be loud because it grabs everyone's attention so that no one pulls the fire alarm when there's not a fire, or else they'll get in big trouble for it. In my school, the majority of pole stations have a stopper over them, and I'm sure they make a sound when you lift it. They do. When you lift it, it goes woo 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 woo. Yeah, and the person pulling the alarm will be caught. I mean, if it weren't for the stoppers, then there would have been a lot of false fire alarms in buildings, because there would have been people that don't know better not to pull a fire alarm unless there's a real fire, which is considered a class 1 misdemeanor in this state. So the stopper is highly recommended for pole stations in public areas where there can be a high potential for someone to tamper with them. Yeah, in school, especially for pole stations in schools, because they're most likely to be activated by a prank or a joke, because some kids out there don't know better not to pull a fire alarm unless there's a fire. I mean, after a few fire alarm incidents I went through when I was in elementary school, they finally came around and put the stopper over the pole stations. Why did they wait that long? I mean, there should have been stoppers over the pole stations in that school before the first false alarm I experienced. due to a kid pulling it. There should have been stoppers over those pole stations. When I started elementary school, or else I would have not had to experience this alarm prank caused by any kid. And then and the principal said, well, we had a false fire alarm because one of our students pulled the fire alarm in the cafeteria. And will there be anything done about it? And the principal said there will be stopper covers installed to prevent future false alarms. And then a year later, in 2013, there was another false alarm caused by another one of the students in that school. And then the principal said, in just a couple days, someone's gonna come and put stoppers over the pole stations. And when I saw those stoppers go over the pole stations in that school, that was a good thing. And when I saw this thing over the pole stations, in that school, I was like, finally we got somewhere in preventing another false alarm caused by a kid that doesn't know better. And then that school got renovated. And then they changed the pole stations and no stoppers on them. Then they reinstalled the stoppers. And then in 2016, another false alarm in the gym. And stoppers came back and there were no more false alarms. In middle school and high school, I had not had a single false fire alarm caused by a student pulling a fire alarm for a joke or a prank. Thanks to the stoppers. So I would highly recommend that all pole stations that are publicly accessible have a stopper cover over them, so no one pulls a false fire alarm or has the temptation to pull a false fire alarm. That is why I think every single one of the pole stations that are publicly accessible should have a stopper over it so that no one tries to pull it or actually pull it when there's no fire. And especially in a restaurant, if a chair is right near that pole station, I bet you there can be a lot of tampering with that. And the stopper will prevent a false alarm in that situation. And if you have a pole station in a classroom at a school like my school does, I mean, there's no question that they're going to be tampered with. And they put a stopper over it to prevent a false alarm. That's why I think these stoppers are very important to have for public pole stations. I mean, I think they should be mandatory on all pole stations in public areas. I think there should be a law passed requiring all fire alarm pole stations in public areas that can be the most at risk to be tampered with have stopper covers over them. I think it should be mandatory law. And if anyone refuses to install a stopper cover over a fire alarm pole station in a building, then they will be fined quite a bit. And when the fire marshal comes in the building and sees that there's no stopper over a pole station, they would not be happy because there's going to be a lot of false alarms. So that is why I think these stoppers should be mandatory on every single fire alarm pole station to help stop false fire alarms. Bye.